Good morning, students. Good morning, students. We are starting a new unit that is about analysis of data. In the previous class, we have discussed about other steps of research process. Starting from the problem statement, discuss about review of literature, the methodology, and how to collect data after preparing a suitable tool, and about the data collection process. Now the data what we have in our hands is the raw data. It is something like from the agriculture field, we get rice. So that raw rice is not possible to eat. We have to do a lot of processing for that. We have to boil that. We have to pounce and separate the husk. Then only we'll get the rice for cooking and eating. So this is a lot of process is there. So the data that was collected from the field, that was in the paper, is a raw data. So we have to process the data for analysis, and then we have to do the analysis of the data. Then only we will get the meaning of data. Then only it is possible to say that the hypothesis that we have formulated can be right or wrong. It can be accepted or rejected. So this particular part we call as the analysis of data. So analysis of data involves data processing and data analysis. The raw data which is collected using a tool should be prepared in such a way that it is possible to analyze using statistics. For the processing of data, we have several steps. It involves, first is the editing. Once we have collected the data, we have to edit the data. The first editing will be done in the field itself. For example, we are collecting the data in a school. We'll edit the data in the school itself, whether the whole data is collected, any part is missing, any additional informations are needed, or why this information, what the details to be collected from the field itself. And then the second editing we call as a central editing. This we come back to our research center or the college, and we'll see the editing part, putting numbers in that, again checking once more. So this we call as a central editing. Then after that we have to do the coding of data. Coding means sometimes we will not do the classification of the data. For example, age classification into 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, 16 to 20 years. This type of classification and coding will not be given. For example, giving a specific code numbers. For example, 1 is the right answer, 2 is the wrong answers, 3 is don't know answers, 4 is any other answers or others. So this type of coding is, if it is not done, that the coding should be done for the data. Then we have to process the data, and after that we have to do the classification. As I mentioned, how many males, how many females, how many children in 5 to 10 years of age group, etc. So this type of coding should be done. So this type of processing and classification should be done. And after that, we have to do the tabulation. That is preparing tables. That we call as a tabulation. We have to prepare tables using the data. And we have to, that is a classified data should be arranged properly and systematically inside a table. That we call as the tabulation. So these are the initial aspect of processing data: to do editing, to do the coding, do the processing of data, classification of the data, and tabulation of data. Then we go for the analysis of data. Analysis involves descriptive analysis and the inferential analysis. These are the two types of analysis we are doing the data. Once the data is processed, that is amenable for analysis. We can do analysis of the data, like cooking of rice. So there are two types. One is a descriptive, that is a basic analysis. And once the descriptive analysis is done, we go for the higher analysis if it is needed, that is a getting inference, meaning out of that. That is a high form of analysis, statistics, we call as the inferential analysis. Descriptive analysis, the unidimensional analysis, bivariate analysis, and multivariate analysis there. Unidimensional analysis means only one dimension will check. This, for example, finding out the center tendency, measures of dispersion, etc. that you have learned already in the statistics class. So, or you will be learning that in the statistics class, how to find the central tendency. For example, a set of data is there. What is the central value of this data? And the central tendency. Measures of dispersion means each value, what is the difference between the center value? That is the measures of dispersion. These are the unidimensional analysis. And bivariate analysis means analysis of variance, because ANOVA. So this is bivariate analysis. So for example, there are more than two values are there. Which value is a significant value? We find out using analysis of variance. Then again, multiple variants are there. We'll do the multivariate analysis, and there is the MANOVA. There is a multivariate analysis. There are several techniques are there. Then we go for the inferential analysis. That is the estimation of the parameter values and testing of hypotheses are done under the inferential analysis. Now we'll see a few things about the editing. As I mentioned, the purpose of editing is to detect errors and omissions and corrections to the possible extent level. Field editing is done immediately after data collection. The central editing is done at the later stage when all the data collection is completed. Coding is a process by which the raw data is transformed into numbers or symbols so that analysis is possible. For example, a score of 0 to disagree and 1 to agree. Then the points to remember for coding, there are a few things we have to remember. For example, pre-coding at the time of designing question may be done if possible, as I mentioned before. Can be done, but in some situations it may not be possible. And whenever we do the coding, there are some points we have to remember. Certain data are inherently quantitative. For example, age is a quantitative data. Any code can be given for some form of data. For example, male or female. You can give code number 1 or A for male and B or 2 for female. In some other study, you can give A for female and B for male, or 1 for female, 2 for male. That doesn't make any difference. The order of coding is important for some type of. For example, code 2 for higher satisfaction, 1 for moderate satisfaction, 2, 0 for no satisfaction. That coding is very important because we calculate according to the score only. Score is calculated according to the course, and even the level of the satisfaction, degree of satisfaction, etc. we calculate according to the maximum score that is obtained. More than one options can be there for some questions. For example, select the nursing journal you read from the following list. As in our library, we have 33 journals in our library. And how many? We'll give the list of all 33, and we are asking the students how many journals you are reading. Just put a tick against that. So more than one options are correct. The provisions for coding missing values needed. For example, in most of the tools, score number 9 is given for don't know answers. So this type of specific code also can be given for some specific answers in the research tool. Then what is classification? Is done for making raw data into homogeneous group based on common characters. This is usually done after entering data into a master sheet or in the format of computer program. The statistical package for social science, we call as a SPSS. That is a commonly used statistical package for analysis, SPSS. The data verification and cleaning should be done immediately after entering the data. So we have to enter either the data, if you're doing a manual analysis, into master sheet. That is a big paper or a chart paper where you have to enter all data in the sheet. For example, you have collected 10 totally 10 samples are there. On the left hand side, you will write 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 10. On 100 samples, 1 to 100 in the left hand side, we will put the number. The first subject is 1, second subject is 2. And on the right hand side, you will arrange the questions. For example, you are asking 20 questions to everyone in the questionnaire. You will put first question, second question up to 20. So what is the response? The first person to the first question, you will mark there in the column. You write the put lines and make it into columns. In the first column, for the first person, first question, what is the answer? For example, they have reported A, that is a male. And second question, that is a question, you are asking what's the balanced diet. Their answer is B, that is the right answer. Similarly, for all the 100 subjects, for the 20 questions, you will end up in a single sheet. You will be able to classify the data, then you're able to prepare table, and you have to analyze the data very simply in the manual analysis. But nowadays we are going for the statistical packages where this type of computer data sheets are there. So we enter the data manually into the computer, and just enter the data mechanically into the computer, and the computer will have options. What analysis you need, just give that instruction. Computer will do the analysis, prepare the tables, prepare the pictures, etc., and will give to you. That is a SPSS, and so many other packages are there. So you can use all those statistical packages for analysis. The only thing is, if you are entering the data, after entering the data, someone should check whether the data entered are correct. And if some mistakes are there, that should be done. Data cleaning should be done. So this is very, very important. Otherwise, after doing all the tiring work of the whole research, you will get a poor or bad or biased result because of the wrong data entry. So the classification according to attributes, you can do the classification according to attributes. For example, descriptive characteristics like literate, sex, etc. Numerical characteristics can classify data. For example, blood pressure, body temperature, these are the quantitative data. Then simple classification, you can use, consider only one attribute. Manifold classification can be there, consider two or more attributes simultaneously and divide the data into number of classes. Then classification according to the class intervals. The numerical data that are continuous can be grouped as class intervals. For example, family income from 201 to 500, 501 to 800, etc. So this is a class interval. Each group of class interval has an upper limit and a lower limit. For example, 201 is a lower limit, 500 is an upper limit on that particular class interval. Now, tabulations of preparing tables. Tabulation is a process of summarizing a raw data and displaying it for further analysis. The tables are used for orderly arrangement of data in a concise and a logical manner. What are the advantages of preparing table? It reduces explanation to minimum, minimize space, save time of researcher and reader, it helps for comparison of data, helps for totaling, detection of errors and omissions, analysis of data is made easier. Just look at the table without reading any of the explanation, but we will give explanations below under each table. But without looking at those things, we are able to, at a glance, we are able to understand the whole data. How to prepare a table? You have to remember some tips for preparing tables. But after your research work, research project, all of you have to prepare the chapter for analysis and result chapter, where you have to prepare tables that is essential for all research work. These are the tips. May vary from one style of research report to another style. in which style we are adopting. Whether we are adopting a style called APA, American Psychologists Association style, or we are using Vancouver style or any other style, the report may vary. The table should be clear, simple, and concise. That is the first thing. Whenever you prepare a table, that should be very clear and should be very simple and concise. The second point, distinct number is needed for each table. Like every child has the right to have a name. Similarly, every table has the right to have a name for that. Distinct number and name is needed for the table. That number should not be given for any other table in that particular research work. For example, you are giving table number 1 means so there should be only one table with that number. Or you can give like 1.1, the first chapter, first table. And the second chapter, first table, you can write 2.1. That number should not be given to any other table in the research. So distinct number is needed. Then each table need a unique name also. The name should indicate all the variables in the table. What are the things you have included? That should be there in the name. For example, distribution, table number 1, table 1, distribution of subjects according to the age. Means you are distributing the subjects, how many males and how many age. For example, from 0 to 5, how many subjects are there? 6 to 10, how many subjects are there? And the frequency and the percentage you are giving. So this is what is inside the table. If you read the name of the table, you should understand what are the variables which are considering or describing in the table. Or what statistical method. For example, you can write the name like the mean standard deviation of age of subjects. So this type of statistics method also, what are the content in the table, that should be reflected in the name. Then the column headings that we call as the captions, and the row heading we call as steps. Be short and clear. For example, captions are there. That is a column heading on the upper end. Okay. On the side, we will write the row heading. That's we call as the steps. And this should be very clear and short, because the table itself, the size is small and each caption is very small. So within that, you have to include that heading. Then unit of measurement must be indicated clearly in captions or steps. For example, we are using measuring height or length. What is the unit? Centimeters. And if you are writing percentage there, then there is no need to repeat that in the along with the number. For example, or money in lakhs of rupees, expenditure in lakhs of rupees. Then under that, there is no need to repeat 10 crore, 15 crores. You can write 10, 15 because that includes 15 crores or 10 crores. Unit of measurement must be indicated clearly using in the captions or step. Then explanatory footnote should be given if needed by giving same symbol to data in the table and to the footnote. If you want any explanatory note on the base of the table, you can write down using some symbols. Symbols you can give in the table. For example, 1 star or 2 star you can put there, and then the same symbol should use below the table 1 star and write the data is significant at 0.05 level. Then demarking like between the columns and row are needed. And nowadays in the APA and Vancouver style, the step demarking, we will not draw columns. The columns for data comparison should be kept nearby. For example, infant mortality rate of India and Pakistan we are comparing. So just keep it nearby so that the readers will be able to compare it properly. And significant data in the table should be indicated separately. You can use a star mark, or you can bold the letter so that the readers will quickly identify this data is significant. Then avoid abbreviations and dicto marks inside the table. Example, the first column, the data is 10. The second column and third column also data 10. We have a tendency to put a dicto mark indicating the same, but that's not allowed in the table. You have to repeat 10, 10, 10. The data should be arranged inside the table in a chronological, geographical, alphabetic order or according to the magnitude. The data should be arranged inside the table either in the chronological order, how it is occurred, or the geographical order, or an alphabetic order, or according to the magnitude of the problem. Some order is needed for arranging data inside the table. The next is the presentation of data. The data, whether it is categorical or numerical, data can be presented in the following ways, like frequency distribution, percentage, proportions, ratio and rates, diagrams and graphs. And presentation of the data, once it was asked as a short note, how the data can be presented. So this is you have to learn, and this you will be learning again in the statistic class also. So I'm not going into the details of the in this class because this will be repeated in the statistics class. So the data, whether it is a categorical data or a numerical data, it can be presented in the following ways. It can distribute as a frequency distribution, including percentage, proportion, ratios and rates, and then you can represent the data using diagrams. And the frequency distribution refers to the data classification based on the frequency variables being studied. Discrete variables and continuous variables can be grouped inside the table. So this is how a frequency distribution, we are representing the serial number, number of children and the number of mothers. Serial number 1, 2, 3, 5 is there. Number of children 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is there. The number of mothers 6, 20, 14, 8. So this is how, and that is a the alignment is altered here in the PowerPoint. So the distribution of mothers based on the age of the mother. This is the class interval. Age of the mother is grouped. How many mothers are there? Number of mothers. The age of mothers in years: 21 to 25, 26 to 30, 31 to 35. Now the class interval we formulate, you should see that. 21 to 25, the next class interval should start from only from 26. And this class interval, the difference also should be equal. 21 to 25 means 21. The class interval is 4. Then 26 to 30 also 4. 31 to 35 also 4. This should be equal class intervals for all the data. So these are the very important when you formulate class interval. Then the percentage, that's the number of subjects possessing a particular characteristics divided by the total number of subjects in the whole group and multiplied by 100. That is a percentage. Aid to understand the relative significance of the data and for comparison. In a frequency distribution table, the sum of all the percentage should be equal to 100. So it will not become more than 100. The proportion is a value that compares one part of a group to the whole. Proportion is expressed as a fraction. The sum of all proportion of frequency distribution table should be equal to 1. That is related to proportion. Ratio is the size of one subgroup related to another group. For example, male-female ratio or teacher-student ratio 1:10. So this is a proportion. Rates is a measure of an event or a characteristic in a specified period of time. For example, birth rate, death rate, etc. Rate is always expressed per 1000 units or its multiples. And we have learned, for example, the infant mortality rate. When we say that infant mortality rate, the total number of infant deaths that occurring per year defined as population, 1000 population. That is how we express. Example, out of 1000 live births, how many infants are dying per year? This is the infant mortality rate. If we say that infant mortality rate is 30 per 1000, that is always expressed as 1000 units or its multiples. Even we can take 0.1 per 10,000 or 1 lakh, etc. Also can be, it can be mentioned like that. Next is the diagrams and graphs. Diagrams and graphs are used to present data in more appealing way so that the mental picture will be persistent for a longer period of time. It facilitates easy comparison. The frequently used diagrams and graphs are bar diagrams, pie diagrams, histograms, line graphs, and scatter diagram. What is a bar diagram? Data is presented diagrammatically in the form of rectangles or bars. The bar represents number of frequency of subjects from comparison. Usually the number of subjects or percentage is given on the y-axis, the variables in the x-axis. So this is how the bar diagram, distribution of mothers age, mothers based on the age. In the x-axis you can see that age, percentage of mothers is given the y-axis. So easily you can identify that in 21 to 25 how many the percentage of mothers in that, and even the number also can be given on the top of the bar. For example, there are only 20 mothers that constitute around the 35 percentage. 20 mothers, you can put the 20 on the top of the bar also, you can indicate the number. What is pie diagram? Is a pictorial representation of the relative frequency or percentage of different items out of the total. The total percentage of all items together will be 100% and represented in the 360 degree in a circle. So that is a pie diagram. So this is how we represent. For example, there are three variables are there. The mothers 21 to 25. That is the first one. It comes around 48%. 26 to 30, 16%. 31 to 35 maybe 36%. The percentage will be represented the 360 degree. The total area is 100%. So this is how we divide the pie diagrams, and each code different colors also can be given. For example, 48% you can give red color, 16% is blue color, and 36% violet color. That key can be given in the key box also. So this is how the pie diagram is drawn. Now, histogram consists of a set of vertical bars in which the area is proportionate to the frequency. The frequency distribution with the numerical data can be represented on a continuous scale using histogram. So this is how we write the histograms. This is a category 1, category 2, category 3, category 4 data is there. And each color, you know that the series 1, series 2, series 3 is there in each category. Showing the number of mothers based on the age. So this is how we draw the histograms. The line graph is used to represent data recorded over a period of time. Two or more frequency distribution can be represented in the same graph. That is the advantage of a line graph. Scatter diagram is used for presenting data on related variables. The correlation between two variables is represented using dots in the graph sheet. The relation between body temperature and pulse rate is an example that is given in the textbook, you can see. So this is about the different diagrams. Next we have formulated tables, we have formulated graphs, and the data is represented. But again we have to give some meaning for the data. Under each table we have to write the interpretation. Now, sometimes by looking at the table, the readers or the evaluators will not get the correct meaning of that. So we have to explain something more, which is what is the meaning of each data, which is most significant data, which is higher or lower, what is the percentage of each data, how it occurred. So these type of some details should be given under each table. So this we call as an interpretation of data. Interpretation refers to task of drawing inference from the collected data after analysis. Utility of research findings always depends on proper interpretation. What is the purpose of interpretation? The explanation of principles and facts behind each research findings, linking findings with other studies, maintaining continuity of research. Explanation serves as a guide for future research studies, and others will understand, appreciate your research work by reading interpretation. So these are the aspects of interpretation. What are the aspects you have to consider for interpreting? Accuracy of your finding, whether it is 100% accurate or 80% accurate, that accuracy you have to mention. Meaning of your findings. What is the exact meaning of the data that is described in the table or in the pictures? What is the importance of your finding? Importance of the data. Then extent to which generalization is possible. Whether you can apply to 100% generalization is possible from the sample to the population. What is the implication of your data? What is the impact of your data? What it produces after if you apply this data or practice this data, what is the implication? So these are the 5 aspects of interpretation. The meaning, you have to write these 5. What is the accuracy of the data? What is the meaning of your data? What is the importance of the data? To which extent generalization is possible, and what is the implications of your data? Now these are the techniques of interpretation. The skill and experience of the researcher in interpreting result is very important. And if you are a novice researcher or a beginning researcher, consult your guiding person or another person, a peer person, a friend, whether your interpretation is correct or not. And think about all events during data collection and the whole content of literature review while interpreting them, and even for discussing also. You have to compare your data with the others' data. You have to compare your findings with others' findings, and you have to discuss, to find the similar data and the contradictory data also. Some others' findings may be same as your finding, but some others' finding may be different. You have to state both. These are the same finding. These are the different findings, and why the same finding has occurred. Why the different findings has occurred. Think about all the events during data collection. Sometimes the data is collected only once, but the emotions, why, where, how, all this might have mentioned by the subjects. So why this data, this variation, how it has occurred, and what is expected if the result is not unexpected one, how this has happened. So think about all the events during data collection. Researcher must give reasonable explanation of the relation which he has found. Then any external information, if collected during the study, must be considered by interpreting the final result of the study, as I mentioned now. Then interpret only after considering all relevant factors affecting the problem to avoid false generalization. And what are the errors that can occur in interpretation? Failure to see the problem in the actual sense. The researcher fails to see any problem in its actual sense, our interpretation may fail. The failure to identify different elements that may affect the findings. So these are the skill of the researcher is very important in identifying all these things. And you have to not only look into the data that is collected or the end result, but what are the things that are affected that you can identify from the subjects at the time of data collection, your experience with the other researchers, other literature. All these things are important while interpreting your findings. Misinterpretation of the factors that are not studied by research, and ignoring some of the factors at the time of data collections and analysis, and inadequate attention for individual subjects. These are some of the errors that can occur in interpretation. Remember, interpretation is asked as a short part many times. That will learn interpretation for short part. But what is interpretation? What are the factors to be considered, and how we will do the interpretation? What are the errors that can occur in interpretation? Writing a short note. So this is the end of this unit. And this is also the 2 days class. Today and tomorrow you have to see these PowerPoints and study as 2 separate classes. So that's the end of this unit. And next day, or next class, we'll discuss about the final unit, writing literature, when writing the final research thesis. So that is the final unit. So that we'll discuss later. It's the end of this unit. So we'll stop the class today by this unit.